Guys, it's Theology Tapes here. And today we're going to be doing our first lesson. This is about the ancient philosophical influences, but namely Plato. And then the next lesson we're going to focus on Aristotle. So, tape tells. This is what the specification expect you to learn. Um, they expect you, in terms of Plato, to understand the philosophical views of Plato, understanding his reality, his idea of the forms, the analogy of the cave, and key knowledge is Plato's reliance on reason as opposed to the senses, so that's rationalism, and the nature of the forms and the hierarchy of the forms, which you'll get into, and the details of the analogy, its purpose and relation to the theory of the form. So all things in this lesson will be covered um, in coherence to the specification. So tapes starter, we're gonna start off like this. Can we guess who the man in the picture is? Very self-explanatory. I'm not even gonna spend time on it. Yes, it's Plato. Plato was a rationalist. He thought that we gain knowledge through our reason. Plato was a dualist, and he also believed that the reality was divided into two: the physical world and the world that we're currently in, and then the world of the forms. And then, as you can see in the slide before, I can't go back, but the slide before, his fingers pointing up to symbolize the world above us. Um, so what you'll learn about in this topic, it's the difference between rationalism and empiricism. Um, and it's basically Plato versus Aristotle. They did not like each other, really. But they had different ideas at least. And Plato's main idea is rationalism. In any essay that you do, you need to mention that Plato was rationalist and he was a dualist. Yeah, rationalism basically believes that um, we get our knowledge through reason. Our senses ultimately are misleading. So we gain our knowledge through using our brain. That's what Plato thought. We gain knowledge through using our noggin. So Plato's understanding of reality. So if you like to copy this down, it's really important. So for Plato, reality is split, as we already know. This is between the physical world, the world that we live in now, and then the world of forms, which is the world that is we're not in. So our world that we live in is known through empirical observation. That's a key term. However, our senses can mislead us. Plato argues that the forms offer us more certainty and assurance. He believes that our minds are trapped in a state of ignorance as of current. So, basically, to explain that, right now we see the world as in flux. As we know, there's loads of flux in the world. There's loads of different versions of different things. In the forms, there is one form of everything. In the world of forms, there's one form of justice. There's one perfect form of justice. There's one perfect form of beauty. There's not loads of different versions. There is one perfect form. And he currently believes that we are currently trapped in a state of ignorance, which is why we cannot experience the forms right now. Um, the next one is in our reality, the physical world, things are always changing, and they're in constant flux. As I said, the forms is absolutely unchanging. So in turn, we gain from the world of forms, we English, the knowledge we gain from the world of forms, we create a lasting knowledge that then the physical world cannot offer. So, as I said before, that basically everything that you see is in flux. Everything changes in this world. Constant. Think of how much evolution in this world has happened. All the evolution from the start of time till now. In the world of forms, that doesn't exist. Doesn't exist. That's not a thing. In the world of forms, everything is perfect, everything is unchanging. So we gain the knowledge that we gain from the world of forms, well, obviously, will be more certain and more assured than the knowledge that we gain from the physical world that we are in right now. Imagine a reality where everything has one complete perfect state. There is not loads of different versions of beauty. There's a lot of different versions of something else. No, one complete perfect state. That is what Plato is suggesting. then there's one complete perfect state of everything, the world of forms. So this is quite a chunky bit, so we'll kind of break it down. Firstly, in our physical world, Plato argues that we experience everything as a particular. Again, key word. Particulars are everyday objects that we see are imperfect representations of the form that they partake in. Again, if you don't get it, we're going to give you an example. For example, when I look at a beautiful piece by an artist, I'm looking at the form of beauty. However, but because we live in an ignorance within the physical world, I look at something imperfectly beautiful. Basically, what it's trying to say is that the everyday objects that we see are imperfect versions of the perfect thing that is in the world of form. In the world of form, again, everything is perfect. There's one form, there's one perfect thing. As you said, form of beauty. That's one perfect thing. There's not many versions of it as there are in the real world, as Plato is trying to say. And for Plato, it's really important we have knowledge of the forms innately. So we must have encountered them before we're born. For him, we again we have knowledge of the form innately. So yeah, we must encounter them before we were born. So we understand them. And the forms are only known through reason. Again, this thing, reason, keeps coming up. It's such a key word when it comes to Plato, rationalism. Reason, reason, reason. It's only known through reason, not through sense observation, nothing like that, through reason. So, these three things, Paul Palmer, truth, bigger than lies, and then the Last Supper painting. How would you describe these three things? I'll give you a little bit of time to think. So, how would you describe these three things? Because I would describe Cole Palmer as a beautiful football player. I would describe truth as good. Okay, Cole Palmer is a beautiful football player. He's a good that using by using the form of beauty, we're talking about good. Yeah, we talk about using good. When we talk about truth over lies by always telling the truth, we're talking about doing good. When we look at the painting, the Last Supper painting, it's a beautiful painting and it's good. Goodness runs in between those three pictures. Cole Palmer is a beautiful football player. He's good. Truth, we always want to tell the truth. That's got goodness in it. The painting, the beautiful painting that we see, that's got goodness in it. You see the correlation. All these three things has goodness in it. So we are brought on to the ultimate form. For Plato, there must be an ultimate slash supreme form. And it's the supreme form is the form of good. It's really important that you know this. It's the supreme form. The form of good is seen as a supreme form as everything has goodness in it. The form of good illuminates the other forms. All perfection flows down from the form of goodness. As we're related back to the pictures, as shown by the pictures, you cannot describe the other forms. For example, beauty, as seen when we talk about Cole Palmer, beautiful man, justice, truth over lies, truth again, and then the beauty also with the plating without using goodness. We had to use goodness. We had to use the word good or goodness throughout all those three pictures. It shows that it flows through everything. As Plato would describe it, it is the ultimate end in itself. The aim of everything is goodness. That is why it's the ultimate form. That is why it's a supreme form, and that is why it sits at the top of the hierarchy of the forms. Because everything flows through goodness, beauty, justice. As we've shown by the pictures, everything flows through goodness. And now we're going to move on to the analogy of the cave, which is another part of the specification, which is so important in terms of Plato. So, the Plato's analogy of the cave within his book, The Republic, he asks us to imagine the prisoners who are in a cave. These prisoners cannot be moved due to being tied. They can only look in one direction, and see shadows of real objects moving behind them. However, they believe that these shadows are real and start to develop a language to talk to them. One day, a prisoner escapes the cave and is blinded by the sun temporarily. However, is then introduced to the real world in inverted commas. The prisoner returns to the cave to try to explain to the other prisoners what he saw. However, they did not understand. Now, please, it's really important that you understand this analogy because you even might get a question itself in the exam about the analogy. So it's really important that you understand the analogy and you can describe it. So if you want, pause the video and look back over this and try to remember and write it down in maybe simpler terms than it's on the slide in your own words, a brief description of the analogy of the cave because it's really important that you do that. So, what are certain things in the cave supposed to symbolize? Again, it's really important that you get this, that you get to know what the things in the cave symbolize. Prisoners. So the prisoners in the cave are supposed to be us, human beings. Um, we are prisoners, not knowing what the real world is like. Yeah? We live in ignorance. We do not know that cave. As a point, the next point, that cave is our reality. We do not know what the real world outside the cave is like because we've never been out. The chains, Plato is supposed to present our chains being as our mind in a state of ignorance. We are chained up, our minds are chained up, um, but in this literally, not literally in real life, I'd hope not, in a state of ignorance, because we don't understand what's going on. The only experience that we have is in the cave. The escapee prisoner is supposed to be a philosopher king, and the sun is supposed to be the form of good, and then the inverted real world is supposed to be the world of forms. Really important that you understand how the different things in the analogy is supposed to represent different things in real life. So, what is the analogy of the cave trying to tell us, and how does it link to the form of good? In the specification, literally says they have to know how it links to the form of good. Or it's good to know also, how does the cave analogy, how does the hierarchy of forms, form of good, it all comes together. Really important that you listen to this. The analogy of the physical cave is Plato demonstrating how knowledge gained through senses is often misleading, as we saw by the people the prisoners who tried to talk to their shadows, which weren't really there. Our senses thought they were really there. They were not. They were shadows. They weren't there. Plato is trying to show that knowledge can only be gained through reason, not through senses, because they can mislead us. The analogy also is trying to demonstrate that we should question the knowledge that we gain through our senses. Otherwise, we are living like the prisoners in our own ignorance. Again, it links back to the first point. We need to question our senses. Our senses often mislead us, and if we don't um, question them, we're going to end up like the prisoners living in ignorance and talking to shadows, which, in my opinion, seems quite boring. The real truth is only found through philosophy, as shown by the philosopher king, the escapee prisoner. He uses reason, he uses philosophy, to escape. Um, yeah, basically Plato is saying that philosophers should rule the world pretty much. Philosophy is the only way to get your mind out of that ignorance. The cave analogy links with the form of good through the concept of the sun in the analogy. In this analogy, the sun, the form of good, illuminates and allows us to see the world of forms, yet is also responsible for existence of life and in turn all the other forms. Again, the form of good is shown in this analogy to basically flow through everything. The form of good, when the prisoner escapes, the form of good, which is the sun, illuminates the prisoner to see the real world. And it's also nourishes him, nourishes the world, and nourishes all forms of life. It's Plato's attempt in showing that goodness, the form of good, everything flows through it. It's so important, and that's why Plato's trying to show it. So, Yeah, the form of good flows through everything. It's perfect. It's the supreme hierarchy of forms, the most supreme one. AO2. Again, I say if you watched my A star, how to get them, it's really important that you include evaluation. This is just brief, but it's really important that you go away and you learn some criticisms of Plato's thoughts. So one of them was Richard Dawkins. Richard Dawkins will come up so much in your specification. You can pretty much use it for anything. I'm not gonna lie. He argues with everyone. So Richard Dawkins believes it makes no sense to talk of another world beyond our one. We cannot make any meaningful statement about the other worlds. Makes sense. Simple. Pretty much simple. It's a strong argument. Again, when you use this argument, you cannot, and I say it again, you cannot name dump him. You need to say Richard Dawkins' argument. I believe Richard Dawkins' argument is strong because I believe it's weak because Aristotle, main man, who we're going to use next lesson, argued that there cannot be one unified form of goodness. Different instances of goodness is very radical. This is very true. In an army operation, it is goodness to kill people. However, in medicine, it is goodness to save people's lives. So Plato obviously argues that there's one form of good. There's one state form of good. Aristotle, on the other hand, is saying, how can there be one unified form of good? Because goodness to many people means many different things, as we've shown by what he said. Army operation, good to kill people. In medicine, we use medicine to save people. It's good to save people. You cannot have one good unified form of good. They're not compatible. They're not compatible together, and that is what Aristotle argued. Tapes, test. So let's come to the end of the lesson. At the start of the lesson, we explained, that Plato was the two types of thinkers. What were those ideas, and how are they explained? So I've given you different questions there. You can go through it and test your knowledge. So you can pause the video and do that now, and then you can go back through the video and check your answers. These again, so good. Just to jog your memory, get those top marks, and then the ultimate challenge. If you're aiming at those top grades, have a go at this essay. I don't think we've gone through enough in this lesson PowerPoint to, I think, maybe do a big one. But I mean, you could do this open book. Again, it's just about having the flow of writing them essays, especially you year 13s need to be getting into that flow. And year 12s, it always helps, getting the ball early. So yeah, it's Plato right in saying there is more to reality than we deserve. As I said, you can do it open book, but practice writing in-depth essay and timed if possible. That's the end of the video. Thank you for watching Theology Tapes. If you like it, like, subscribe, and yeah, loads of other videos on the way. And hopefully, if you follow my videos, we'll be leaving in August 14th with top grades. Cheers. Thank you.